Michelle and her brother Christopher share a strong connection. Christopher has a very sharp brain, and as they walk out of school, a guy in uniform collides with him and lectures him about the escalating tensions between humans and robots. This conflict traces back to the time when Walt Disney introduced the world's first robot, leading to their mass production. Currently, robots have begun to revolt against their human creators, who have treated them as mere slaves, under the leadership of a peculiar robot known as Mr. Peanut. The situation quickly escalates into war, with robots initially gaining the advantage until a scientist named Ethan Skate developed a device called a Neurocraster, which enabled a connection between the human mind and mechanized drone bodies. Following this breakthrough, humans regained the upper hand and ultimately triumphed in the conflict, resulting in the imprisonment of the remaining robots, as Mr. Peanut agreed to a peace treaty. Now, 3 years later, Michelle resides with an elderly man who serves as her foster parent and utilizes the Neurocraster regularly. Michelle goes to her school, and this technology has become commonplace in educational institutions, but she is not very fond of it. Because of this rebellious behavior, she is called up to the office, and as the teacher asks her to call her mother, Michelle discloses that her parents and brother have passed away in a car accident during the war. During the night, Michelle awakens to a noise coming from outside. Curious, she rises to investigate through the window and notices a shadow. As she descends with a flashlight, she hears something shift in the storage area. Alarmed, she quickly retreats inside, secures the door, and attempts to contact her guardian, who is asleep with his Neurocraster activated. In a panic, Michelle rushes to her room and hides beneath her bed. The intruder turns out to be a robot. After surveying the room, it discovers Michelle hiding and pulls the bed up. She attempts to defend herself with a screwdriver, but the robot seems non-threatening. Unable to speak initially, it shows her a problem that needs fixing. Once Michelle repairs a wire, the robot begins to communicate normally. It takes a photograph of her with her brother, Christopher, and indicates that he is him. Skeptical and frustrated, Michelle reacts by throwing the robot into the cupboard, which disturbs her guardian. In her attempt to escape, she finds herself confronted by him. He yells at her and pushes her aside. Christopher then intervenes, pushing back against the man. Enraged, the guardian swings a golf club at Christopher, but is overpowered once more. He tries to call the police, but before he can relay any information, Michelle uses an electric shock on him. They manage to flee and jump into the car, just as her guardian's Neurocraster robot lunges at them. However, Michelle successfully manages to throw it off with a crash. In the morning, while in a secluded location, Michelle inquires whether the genuine Christopher is still alive. He affirms this, but adds that he is not well. When she asks for his whereabouts, he can only indicate that he is at Center, the company responsible for creating the Neurocrasters. However, since Center operates globally, she requests further details. Christopher mentions that a doctor who wears glasses might have the information. Michelle recalls that the doctor who informed her of her brother's death fits that description. She retrieves a map, and Christopher indicates that they need to head to the exclusion zone where all the robots were located after the war. They discover that the individual from whom Michelle's guardian acquires the supplies is based in the exclusion zone. They obtain the address from the trunk of a car and travel there, concealing themselves on a train. Upon arriving at the factory, they cautiously observe the owner from a corner. The man retrieves some money from a locker, and shortly thereafter, a Neurocraster officer approaches him. He is on the verge of selling a firearm when the officer suddenly aims it at him. The man remains composed and leans slightly forward. Before the officer can react, he is struck by a beam and collapses. The assailant is revealed to be a robot named Herman. Meanwhile, an adept super cop named Marshall arrives in search of them. However, Keats, the man they were observing, and Herman manage to escape. Michelle and Christopher take refuge inside the truck. As they arrive at their destination, they witness the unfolding events from behind a crate, engaging in conversation and strengthening their bond. They quickly sense the presence of someone nearby, who apprehends them without delay. Michelle has learned that they are heading to the exclusion zone, and she feels compelled to join them. Keats warns her that this is a dangerous decision and urges her to turn back. But at that moment, Marshall arrives via the elevator. He conceals the bots and instructs Michelle to act as if she is his mute sister. They maintain a friendly demeanor in front of Marshall, who is actually there to arrest Michelle for her numerous offenses. As Keats attempts to intervene, Marshall directs his attention toward him, and soon Herman appears, ready to confront Marshall with a weapon. However, Marshall, displaying professionalism, uses Keats as a human shield. He retaliates and then gestures toward Michelle, who is familiar with the clap-light system, and promptly disables it. A chaotic fight ensues, with each person attacking Marshall in turn. After a strenuous struggle, they manage to subdue him and escape, only to find themselves in the desert. In the desert, they encounter scavenger bots, which resemble robotic zombies. Keats flees to his expansive storage room, where he operates a larger version of Herman. Observing this, Michelle suggests that it will be simple for him to transport her to the exclusion zone, and Keats concurs. Herman takes control of the van and begins to move. During their journey, they recount the story of their initial meeting during the war. At a critical moment when Herman was about to kill him, Keats, in a state of despair, was saved when Herman chose to lift him instead. Since then, they have been evading the authorities. The Neurocraster serve as a means to explore an alternate past, allowing individuals to confront their trauma, as Ethan attempts to do with his mother, although the results are not entirely effective. Ethan is now filled with anger, particularly knowing that Marshall has been defeated. He contacts Marshall for a virtual meeting, offering advice and encouragement to motivate him to make another attempt at capturing them. The team has arrived at the exclusion zone, but they are soon met with projectiles being hurled at them. Herman loses his footing, causing everyone to tumble down. They find themselves encircled by the robots and are subsequently captured. Inside, they encounter a variety of robots and are brought before Mr. Peanut. He does not perceive them as a threat. Michelle explains that they are in search of a doctor with glasses who can provide information about his brother's whereabouts. Mr. Peanut then reveals that there is indeed a doctor among them who fits the description, Dr. Clerk. He operates a facility located in the heart of the desert, but both Mr. Peanut and Keats advise against her going there, citing the dangers of traveling in the desert at night and the high risk of fatality. Consequently, Michelle resolves to set out in the morning. That night, Penny hands Michelle a postcard containing Dr. Clerk's address. Mr. Peanut had been instructed by Dr. Clerk to send this information immediately if a robot identifying itself as Christopher appeared. The location indicated by the address is notorious for its scavengers, necessitating the presence of robust robots. Mr. Peanut assists them by providing a robot named Popfly, who initially appears to be somewhat frail, but proves otherwise. The following morning, they commence their journey and arrive at Dr. Clerk's residence by nightfall. They soon find themselves besieged by scavengers. In a panic, they pound on the door as the attackers close in. Suddenly, lights illuminate the area, and loud music blares, causing the scavengers to cover their ears and flee. In the chaos, the ground beneath them gives way, and they slide down a chute. Dr. Clerk confronts them with a gun drawn. Upon recognizing Christopher's robot, he is taken aback. Michelle and Keats quickly corner him, demanding to know Christopher's location. He reveals that Christopher is situated in Center's main building in Seattle. They abducted him because Christopher is believed to possess an ideal brain suitable for operating the Neurocrasters. Currently, he is in a comatose state, being sustained solely for this purpose. They confront Dr. Clerk, insisting that he assist them in locating her brother. Meanwhile, Marshall has returned to the scene. Mr. Peanut allows everyone to flee while he prepares to confront Marshall. Outside, Michelle and Christopher attempt to escape separately as the others face a multitude of soldiers. They resist the assault. Michelle finds herself encircled by soldiers as well, but this time, Dr. Clerk intervenes to rescue her. Inside the house, Marshall overpowers Mr. Peanut and exits in search of Michelle. Witnessing the situation unfold, Dr. Clerk declares that they must flee while he confronts Marshall, fully aware that Marshall is prohibited from killing humans. However, Ethan descends at that moment and swiftly kills Dr. Clerk, leaving Marshall in shock. As the soldiers capture Christopher and Michelle, Marshall arrives to rescue her. The soldiers withdraw. Having secured Christopher, his robot is taken to the center facility, where Ethan approaches him. Marshall accuses Ethan of being a murderer, to which Ethan responds his accomplishments are a result of both him and Christopher. He explains that the Neurocrasters are intended to bring peace by enabling individuals to forget their past, as he has done, having endured an abusive mother. Michelle and the others devise a plan to retrieve her brother from the main facility. Dr. Clerk's robot reveals that if she manages to rescue her brother, the entire drone system of Senna will collapse. Michelle considers this a promising strategy, although Mr. Peanut, now significantly injured, advises against it. Nevertheless, after much persuasion from Michelle, he ultimately consents to the plan. They commence their mission by launching an assault on the entire facility. With the assistance of the formidable Herman, they hurl vehicles at the structure. This prompts all the soldiers to emerge and seize the opportunity, allowing Michelle to infiltrate the facility alongside Dr. Clerk. Although Herman sustained significant damage during the confrontation, he remains sufficiently large to continue the battle. The others persist in their combat, transforming the ground into a complete war zone. Observing the chaos, Ethan decides to join the fray, leaving the main room occupied solely by two scientists. However, Dr. Clerk's robot intimidates them into retreating. At last, Michelle reunites with her brother. Ethan takes control of the most powerful soldier available, which effortlessly dispatches a majority of the robots. He also manages to defeat the colossal robot. While Mr. Peanut is engaged in combat with the soldiers, Marshall enters the scene, aiming his weapon at him. Instead of taking his life, he reveals Michelle's location before departing and deactivating his Neurocraster. Michelle dons a Neurocraster to establish communication with her brother, successfully reaching him. Christopher informs her that escape is impossible for him. To save the others, she must sever his power, but this action will result in his death. In the meantime, Ethan eliminates the latest formidable version of Herman, who reverts to his original form yet continues to assault the soldiers. Ethan flees and encounters Mr. Peanut behind him. Herman is now wounded and on the brink of death. Michelle is adamant that she cannot allow her brother to perish, but Christopher insists that there is no alternative and that she must take action. They share a heartfelt farewell embrace, and Michelle ultimately disconnects the power. This action leads to the collapse of the entire drone system, resulting in the shutdown of all Senate devices across the nation. With Herman now deceased, Keats mourns over him, expressing that he was a soul companion and that he now feels utterly alone. However, it is revealed that Herman has a smaller version of himself, and they are reunited once more. The entire narrative is reported in the news. Ethan is apprehended, while Michelle emerges as a global hero, delivering a live television address advocating for a more unified world where humans and robots can coexist harmoniously.
The Electric State is terrible from every angle. It is immersed in terrible writing, direction, and performances. This is an overpriced mess, and just as a Netflix film, the movie is pointlessly filled up with popular actors regardless of whether they fit in the role or not. The characters and their interactions are cliched and predictable. There is nothing interesting or surprising that occurs in the film, although some audiences may find it watchable. But for me, it is intolerable. It is very straightforward. The film is merely made to earn money and doesn't find any artistic sense like the graphic novel Simon Stalenhag from which the film is adapted. We can only hope to give it a 1 star for the production quality.
That concludes the video. For more content like this, please remain subscribed to the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, you may find others to your liking as well.